Uh, Miss Dino, Miss Dino, Miss Dino, Annie Dino, Annie Dino. She's ignoring me.
Yes, she is.
Annie Dino. Is there something you would like to share with the class? I want to thank everybody for joining this morning. I'm going to make an admission before we start. And that is, I cheated a little bit on my assignment. Sorry, Cynthia. Sorry, Charles. This is recycle of some material that I shared in a sermon in November of 2024. And I figured everybody's.
We all remember that.
I suspect that it's okay that I reshare this material. And not only that, but I just think the concept here is so important and so prescient to where we are right now that I think it's appropriate to look at it again. So that's what we're going to do. A huge thank you to Annie Dino, who did an excellent job last week. I texted Annie this last week and I was a little nervous because she put the bar really high for this series, which I think is amazing. And she said that the only thing you have to do is to show a picture of a baby lamb. So that's what I'm doing. And she said that everything is going to be fine. So
Doesn't skew it.
now you've seen the baby lamb and it's okay. We're going to start. Before we do that, I want to make a plug. I want to talk about something really important, and that is why learn to teach. Okay, you may not think you're a teacher. You may not think that that is a skill of yours, but I will tell you that most people who are highly skilled at anything aren't in reality the people that are just naturally talented. It's the people that work really hard, grind through, do it over and over again, and make mistakes. Charles never makes mistakes, but the rest of us do. But it's something that just becomes a part of you as you gain skill and as you work at it. So I want to encourage you, if you don't think of yourself as a teacher, I want to tell you that every single person in this congregation has something really important to share. Every single one of you. The format may be writing, the format may be teaching, but you all have something really important to share. The format may be participating in the worship service. And I just think it's really important that you not discount the possibility that you could be a really great teacher. And we have some great examples in this room this morning. Joshua chapter 13. This is a really intriguing passage. And it's intriguing for me because of one phrase in the passage, but let's read the whole thing first. Now, Joshua was near Jericho. He looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied. "But as a commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down on the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." So the phrase that gets to me is, "Are you for us or are you for our enemies?" That is a question I think that a lot of people are asking in this culture today. I think we're all in fight mode. I think we're all tensed up for whatever reason because of our advocacy for one position or another. And that's the question we often ask. Are you for us or for our enemies. And the more modern phrase of that would be, whose side are you on anyway? Right? I mean, that's what people ask. I think today we're going to discover that perhaps that's the wrong question. It was the wrong question for Joshua, and it was the wrong question for us. And the answer that he received was decidedly unsatisfying, because he was looking for an answer, and the Lord said, neither. I'm not for you or your enemies. What about Joshua's past would cause him to ask this question? So we're going to talk about this a little bit. You can imagine that Joshua, for 40 years, had been following his nemesis, his mentor, Moses, around in the desert, wandering and wandering and wandering, but the whole time dutifully following Moses wherever he went. Suddenly, Moses was left behind, and it was Joshua's turn. And what an awesome thing for him. Can you imagine? You know, you've been with your mentor this whole time, and then suddenly they're no longer there. And I will tell you, if you're fortunate enough to get older, mentors will not be here forever. They won't. And what you're left with is the question, is it my time? That's the question. And Joshua is asking, is it my time? So he leads that army dutifully into the promised land. Spies have spied out the city of Jericho, highly fortified city. He is ready to fight, right? And then he is confronted with someone who looks like an enemy. But is it an enemy indeed? When you think about people that came before you, who sacrificed so much for you, that shepherded you through a wilderness, who comes to mind? I think of J.G. Pinkerton. I think of my dad, who is now 97 years old. I think of Bill and Claire Cochran, who cared for us and cared for this place as if it were their own, and that we were their own family. And now I think of John Williams, unfortunately. But so when you think of mentors that are perhaps gone now, who do you think of?
I had a great aunt who was my father's aunt. His mother died when we were very young, so she was really like my grandmother, my Aunt Nora. And she had a way of, if you did something wrong, she wouldn't berate you or explain to you why you were wrong or anything like that. She'd just take you in, and just the way she looked at you, you were sad that you disappointed her. I think of Joanne Pinkerton.
Yeah, for sure. Guy.
Well, my aunt who raised me was one person who she taught me how to really look at people as people. Her favorite saying was that all people are people.
Yeah.
That was a very thing. Second, I would go with my grammar school teacher, let's say, you see my picture with him. He was the father figure when everybody had moved out of my family, come to the state. He was the father figure, the friend, took me under his wing until I came to the state.
Yeah.
And while in the state, after married life, started becoming a father, member of my community, and the person I'll take that place as my mentor is sitting in the room. I don't need to call his name. Put him on the spot. Delport.
Mhm. Other mentors, Annie.
When I was in either fourth or fifth grade, I had to write a paper about who is your hero. You had to pick anybody we wanted to pick. And I picked my dad. And if I think back, I could say that both my parents really demonstrated this. But my dad also had a very calm demeanor. So, where my mother's demeanor was a bit more unpredictable and explosive. So I think I latched onto my dad, and I always found my dad to be fair. I always found him to be generous, and I found him to be humble. And even in the, let's say, fifth grade, I think I recognized that I didn't have those, or I wanted them in that way somehow. And I think the way we grew up, in our immediate family, in our extended family, those were, they were valued, but they were not spoken about. And my dad, like, that's the humble piece, my dad always did that. And it was so impactful then, and I think it just kind of kept going. My dad's been gone 20 years. And I think all my siblings would say the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think it's very, very strongly influenced. This church has influenced me a ton. But it springboarded off of, I think, what I learned literally in my own home.
Mhm. A lot of these people are gone that you've described. Thank goodness Teal is still here. What do you feel? Have any of you felt this when a mentor's gone? Have any of you felt this sense that it's my turn? Have you felt that at all?
That's it. Mike is what I think is sometimes you do something, it's like you react quickly to something and you step back and again, it's like it's that person, it's not you reacting or doing the thing, it's that person that lived in you.
Right.
But once you do it, you step back, it's like, oh, okay. And I can see my mother doing exactly what I just did.
Yeah.
Right. That is so powerful, because it's not so much about you, it's about honoring the example that you were given. And honoring that example means doing the things that you absorbed from that person, right? Right. Can you think of some examples of that someone is gone and something that you might have done to honor that person? Any?
Well, going back to my dad, one of the things I remember writing about was how my dad demonstrated great American work ethic. That was a very impressive, wasn't it impressive, fifth grade? And I think when he passed, so 20 years ago now, when he passed, I think all of my siblings and I, as well as myself, we knew that it was time to take care of mom. We always did, took care of mom and dad, but how we rose up as a collective was so impressive. And so it solidified us as siblings. I mean, I am absolutely in love with my siblings. And I think that was a very strong driver of that. So I think I did personally, but we did as a collective as well.
Right. And I don't know, I'm just going to speak for myself, but there's this realization that if it's not me, then who is it? Who's coming next? And I if you're fortunate enough to get old, you're eventually going to ask yourself that question. So I would encourage you to ask that question earlier than later. So the beginning of this story, I think that's where Joshua was. Can you imagine leaving behind your mentor and him saying, it's going to be okay, but it's really up to you, So Joshua had absorbed all of this wisdom through all of this wandering in the wilderness, and it was his time to go forward. So he came up with a plan. I mean, the spies came back and they said, it's really bad, guys. Can we really do this? And honestly, I'm not sure if Joshua had a plan other than to just bear down and fight hard. But that is not what God had planned. And it's not what happened in this transformative moment in Joshua's life when he's approached by what appears to be a really threatening guy, a huge warrior who's going to threaten him and his family and the entire tribe of Israel, right? I mean, it's a pretty threatening environment. So I would ask the same question. Are are you for us or are you for our enemies? Because we're about to fight a big fight and we really need to know. I want to back up a little bit to something that is so important, not only in the wandering in the wilderness, but in the entering of the promised land, and that is God's ever presence with the people of Israel. He was always there. He was always there, and he was there. One of my favorite passages that gives this sense and should have given Joshua a sense of what was happening in the promised land is Exodus chapter 23. See, I am sending an angel ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. My angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivitites, is that right? Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. Can you imagine this kind of angel following ahead of you your entire life? How empowering would that be? And in fact, what if the enemy that you're about to fight is actually your guardian angel? What if this man, armed to the teeth, was actually the angel who was following ahead of Israel the entire time? I think that's a really, really powerful thought. So I want to pose a question. There might not be an answer to this for all of you, but I hope you can give me some examples. Is there an example of someone in your life who you thought was an enemy who ended up being your friend? Any ideas? That's a tough one, isn't it?
It's on us.
It is.
Enemy is strong, but
Yes, it is strong.
a couple in Houston who drove me crazy, and I did not like spending any time with them, but they were in my church, so I was kind of required to.
Unlike us.
And Kale was telling me we're being recorded, so reminding. No, I didn't. But I really felt that I needed to pray about it. And so I started praying about it. And I will say they became, over the next 2 years, some of our closest people.
Yeah.
It was very unexpected.
Well,
Scott,
yes, Jill.
yeah, I did think it wasn't personal, it was numbers of people over the years after we became gender egalitarian and other things, left us down Church of Christ, not totally convinced of what we were doing. or had already left. And they weren't in that camp with us when they left. And then 6 months, 18 months later, I'd get an email saying, oh, I get it. You
Yeah,
know, and then now
Yeah.
they've been in churches that are traditional, they see how stifling that is. They're
Yeah.
saying, where was I actually happy? It was back in Stanford.
right, right. I think I could broaden this as well. Are there people in the world that you would perceive as enemies who might actually be a friend?
Yeah.
I think that's an easier way to put it. Because I think we do that all the time with people we don't know, people we don't understand, people that are very different from us. We just categorize them, whether we know it or not, as someone who's a threat, right? It's a natural human thing to do. And I think what happens is that once we start interacting, we suddenly realize that that person's not a threat. Yes.
We moved to our house in 1998, and we have a still neighbor on one of on our side, and the guy drove this muscle car, vroom, 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 was making a lot of noise first thing in the morning. And he had tattoos all over his body. He was scary looking dude. I mean, really scary looking. But when I approached him and asked him, now must move forward, we are living in that house 27 years. We are the best friends. He is sweetheart. I mean, he's a big, scary looking, but really pussycat, you know. He lives with his mom and he takes care of her. And when we travel, he takes care of our house. He has a key to our house and he goes in and check and he's the, so this is the first impression, which was like, oh, I don't know about this guy. And then when you get to know people, you find out that we are totally different, that the first impression you get.
Right.
But that's what, you know.
Right. You know, I'm not going to discount there are evil people in the world, and there are people that may threaten your safety. But I will tell you, based upon my own experience, I'm going to only speak for myself. But most of the people that I perceive as being a threat for whatever reason are not that. That's the truth. That's the truth for me. I'm not going to speak for each of you. I want to give you an example. So this last summer, now that I have hearing aids, I have pretty decent hearing. So
That's the reason.
I'm sitting out on our back porch and I hear something that shouts, it's a whining tone and it sounds like a shop vac. And I'm thinking, well, somebody's working around their garage or something and it's going to go away. Well, it went all day long and it would stop about 8 o'clock at night. And then at 7 o'clock the next morning, it would start again. And this went on for a week and a half. So every time I was outside, I would hear this noise. It was driving me crazy. So I decided I was going to start trying to figure out where it was coming from. And I was really irritated that someone would be so inconsiderate of all their neighbors. But I honed in on the house. I actually had to drive quite a ways to get to, I mean, they were close to us, but the roads did not connect. And I identified the house and there was a big gate at the front of the house and it said, beware of dog. And it said, delivery people leave packages here. I mean, everything about this house said, you are not welcome. You are not welcome. And I could hear the noise coming from their house. And so I actually did some research and I found out who lived there. And I found a phone number for this guy. And I called him and I said, I was very, very considerate, but I was prepared to meet this really nasty guy, right? And so I left him a voicemail. I said, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm hearing this noise and I think it's coming from your house and I'm not sure what it is. And can you please explain to me what's going on? Well, his name is Joe. He called me back within a couple of hours. The nicest guy you would ever want to meet in the world. And Joe had a problem with bees that had made a nest in his siding. And he had a dog that he didn't want to poison with spray. And so someone had told him that he could take a shop vac and put it at a gap in the siding where the bees were coming out, and he could vacuum them, but he would have to leave it on for hours and hours and hours at a time. Okay, so this is all making perfect sense to me, right?
Yeah.
And I just said, this makes perfect sense. All I would ask is that, if it doesn't work in another week, that we find an alternative to this. But he and I are now friends. And I could have left my impressions with him at the front gate of his house. And I could also fill in the blanks about all the kinds of mean and nasty things he was doing to his neighbors because I didn't know who he was. And so all I would say is that don't be afraid to interact and approach with people who you perceive to be a threat or to be your enemies. Do the right thing. If you don't feel safe, do not push the envelope. But a lot of times it's not about safety. It's just not, it's about us not wanting to interact. It's about us wanting to hold on to our perceptions of what other people are like. And Joshua could have done that with this guy, but he didn't. He interacted with him. And then the transformation really happened. And this is the part of the passage that I really love. He replies to Joshua, "Are you with us or are you with our enemies?" "Neither," he replies. "But as a commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down on the ground in reverence and asked, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing is holy ground." And so Joshua did. So the transformation came with his courage to approach and to engage. And then who he found out that this guy was, I think it's the angel. I love imagining that's who it was. That this was a friend to Joshua and a friend to Israel. And I think more often than not, our courage to engage people that are not like us will allow us to discover that this person in front of us may indeed be an angel and not an enemy. So I wanted to end a little early so we could kind of have a little more talk and discussion about what this means for us in the culture in which we're living right now. So I'm just going to open it up to everybody. Any?
When I was doing my mindless week, I remember having a lot of these, what I would consider aha moments. And when you got to the point about saying, this place is holy ground. So my thought was like, well, why is it holy ground? Why is it holy ground? And I think it's holy ground because this is where this revelation comes. So holy ground could be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Holy ground could be in a church, it could be in a bathroom, it could be outside of the woods. It's not the ground itself, it's where the revelation comes about what is proper, what is the love between God and you and God.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the courage to get in there, and then I was saying to you, this is holy ground because you have gotten the message. You got the message. You did what had to be done, and you got the message.
Yeah.
So that's how I take holy ground.
Yeah, I love that, Charles.
You were talking about application for today. And I think one thing we deal with now is this really extreme polarization of people. There's people that think like me that I like, and then there's people that don't think like me that are somehow the worst possible evil on the planet.
Mhm.
And never the twain shall meet, right? I mean, there's the media, I mean, just so many things reinforce that. And what I hear in this is that just because somebody doesn't think the way I do, does not mean that they don't have really valuable things that I need to hear.
Mhm.
And that the whole thing about, recognizing this holy ground is remaining open to conversation. And remaining open and seeking reconciliation. And I want to play with that word holy and kind of put in its place for this, it's got common ground, like
Mhm.
where are we the same? Right?
Mhm.
Because it's in that second, it's, and I think somebody's already said it, Dean said that people are people, right? We're all human, and so if we can somehow get there, I think we get to a really holy place.
You're right. And I think we've talked about this before, but I love this idea. To me, I feel the presence of God in the space between you and me. That's where I feel the presence of God.
I think the courage was coming and seeking first to understand. And seeking first to understand. That's where the courage comes in.
Right.
I'm gonna stop and seek first to understand.
Right. And I think
Exactly.
what's really important is the humility that Joshua expressed when he realized that he was in the presence of God, which is, what do you have to say to me? Right. And when he was willing to listen to what God had to say about this interaction, then everything changed, including the battle that was about to come. Jericho didn't fall because they fought really hard. Jericho fell because they did this crazy thing that God asked them to do, marching around the city again and again and again, day after day. And then it fell. They would have failed if Joshua had come up with a classic military plan. They would have failed. But he listened to God, and that's when the transformation started to happen.
Okay, this is, I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but I think we met the strangest angel about a decade and a half ago, because he wasn't what we wanted him to look like or act like, but he challenged us to change our way of interacting. And a few of, well, probably most of the room knows Dougie, remembers him. He was not the kind of person, if you saw on the street, you would walk up to and shake his hand. He was a little intimidating, the skulls on the bicycle and all that wonderful stuff, but he wanted some kind of interaction.
Mhm.
And I found that out because I was in the foyer, the first line of defense, so to speak. And he came in and we had a conversation. And it seemed to me that was all he wanted, because 5 minutes of talking, and he just kind of got in his bike and left. And I really think that somehow this church encountered an angel. It because the angels don't go, here's something nice for you. They test you.
Yeah.
This is what you're supposed to do. Are you going to do it, or are you going to do what you want?
Yeah. Actually, I never think of a potluck in this church without thinking of Dougie, because he had this amazing sixth sense about when food was around, and then he would be here. Yeah. Charles.
Yes, what Aaron said, I do firmly believe God brings you people. that are very unlikely people to see the film.
Yeah. I think it's a test, and this was a Joshua test. Yeah, Laconia, did you have something? Or,
No, he did.
oh.
No. So me under the boss. Actually, I mean, we were talking about holy ground. I'm thinking, as scary as it is today, we may be living in a holy time. Because this time we are living now today, forced every one of us to rethink and reassess our education, our culture, everything about how we see life. As new informations are coming about people we thought that was the devil of the world, we realize that if I were in that person's situation, I would probably do it act the same way. And a lot of time, that person didn't come with an evil intent. It's just that he threatened somebody else's interest, and that person is the one that feeding you the information about it. And I'm coming with that because I just learned something about someone I thought that was the worst human being that ever existed was former president of Uganda, Idi Amin Dada. He was demonized. So, I mean, anyone who say Idi Amin Dada, that they dead. But what he did back then is exactly what this president is doing now. Is reclaiming the resources of his country for his people. But the media, Hollywood, everyone demonized this guy. So this is why I think that we all be thinking how we see life, how we re-educate ourselves, so we can, after this time, we can probably see that this is what we needed on our way to the promised land.
Right. Right. That is a perfect place to end. I'm going to give a little bit of time to Cynthia to come up. And then we'll have a closing prayer. Aaron, you can go ahead and stop the recording now if you want. But thank you guys.
Thank you.